You're on.
Holders family, again, as always, for us to be gathered together online to continue the process of preparing ourselves for role of ascension that we probably through our religious experience perceive it to be something of a place more than a consciousness. Yeah, we're getting some feedback. Can you hear it?
I believe
Hello?
you're getting it from me, Nasik. I'm going to mute my mic.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Continue on. Super.
Okay. So we'll probably perceive this concept of ascension more religiously as a place that we would had to go as opposed to a realm of consciousness we had to acquire. And this kind of caused me to reflect back, looking at the things that we've been talking about and how they have affected us and prevented us from, quote unquote, this other realm of consciousness that is needed for us to move from a low level to a higher level. And I reflect back to the 13th century, Aristotle and the church. And I want to tie that to something I want us to think about futuristically. And, the great controversy, and you don't hear anyone speaking about, other than Abba Ben Ami, and you don't hear it anymore at all, and that is physical immortality. That's just something that he threw out there seemingly, and that, well, of course, it's just absolutely impossible. Never has happened before, but nevertheless, he put it out there. And the more I, retrospect and introspect, I want to put forth today, for us to think about, reason about, or contemplate about, however term you want to use. I know we've been talking about thinking and knowing, but nevertheless, this is what I want us to think. I'm going to put this together, but I'd like some help on it. It's called From Eternity to Devolution to Evolution, the present timeline called prophecy. I state it again. From eternity to devolution to evolution, the present timeline called prophecy. What they're saying is that since the devolution, or what we call our fall, everything has been geared to evolution. So you're talking about a timeline starting from devolution to evolution as being, quote unquote, prophetic. But if we are saying that, then we got to say there was a beginning, and certainly if there's a beginning, there's an end. So who could say when the beginning was? But who could say at the end? If there is a beginning, there's an end. So we got to think about these things. From eternity, is there such thing as eternity? See, all of these things has occurred because of, quote unquote, what has been put forth as a historical reality that we have been wrestling with and have not had to understand it. So I'm saying from eternity to devolution, to devolve. Then from the devolution or devolving to an evolution, This is how it's been played. So then there's a timeline that we call prophecy. And we are talking about, we're not talking about from eternity, we're talking about from the devolution, or from the fall, or from when we went to sleep. So that becomes the timeline. Well, that's part of reality. And I want us to really think about that. And the reason I bring it up, I'm going to go back to the book, The Turning Point. I'm going to pick up on page 37 to lock into where we are today as what we refer to as ascension. I read, it says, Aristotle in the church in the 13th century, Thomas Aquinas combined Aristotle's comprehensive system of nature with Christian and ethics, and in doing so established a conceptual framework that remained unquestioned throughout the Middle Ages. The nature of medieval science was very different from that of contemporary science. It was based on both reason and faith. Now, we know both of these terms, reason and faith. You know, we can examine these things. This comes under the rationalistic way of viewing things, comes under the concept of mind. And I know you keep saying, well, why we keep talking about this mind? We really locked on this. And the main goal was to understand the meaning. So if the main goal is to understand the meaning and significance of things, that means then either we lost it through devolution or we never had knowledge of those things. Rather than, here's the word, prediction and control. Well, what is prediction? Prediction is to what? State something futuristic that's going to happen, or to prophesy something to happen, or to proclaim something to happen. And then when it happened, it is no longer called prophecy or prediction. It's called history. It's called history. So was there a time when man was not controlled like by another man? Today, we are convinced that that's the only form of government. You know, that form of government is called a righteous government. It's called the kingdom of God, and and all of that. But I want us to really think about this, because just to make us, you know, a little bit more astute in the things that has occurred with us and how we've been viewing these things. Now, I want to take that and tie that back to reason and faith. And we kind of left off yesterday when I said I wanted to link together this idea of faith and the double-minded person being unstable in all his ways, etc., etc. We're going to pick back up and we're going to read the book of James 1:6-8, and then we're going to explain something to link this together with all of what I just preferenced. But let him ask in faith. And we just got through reading about reason and faith. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like a wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. So when we look at a wave on the sea, we see however the wind blows, or however the tide come in, the waves, they are what? Unstable. They move. They're not stable. So this is an analogy here. This is a parable here. This is an allegory here. And verse 7 reads, for let not that man think that he shall receive anything of the Lord. So if you're driven by the wind, and let's go back to what we see wind is. Wind is spirit. And the spirit is thinking. And that's what we say spirit is, thinking. So when you have a double mind or two ways of looking at things, you are driven just like the wind. You're back and forth. You're not stable in any of it. Something come up today, it sounds good. Something come up, you understand, later on today, you're over here. You're moving back and forth. No stability. It says a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. Now, how does faith and how does reason and rationalism tie in? It ties completely into it. We read, when we closely review the narrative above, we are instructed to ask in faith, nothing wavering, and when we consider nothing, by definition, something that does not exist. If we consider nothing, by definition, if it's nothing, that means through definition or meaning, it's something that does not exist. Listen carefully. The term nothing wavering is referring to one's faith. So one's faith cannot be something that exists, because where there exists a double-minded person or approach, there must be wavering. Therefore, a double-minded person is unstable in all of her ways, because faith is something that does not exist. Thus, it becomes something that one just believes, or something you have believed in. Therefore, faith, belief, or something you believe in without works is insignificant. Therefore, we can clearly proclaim there is no such thing as faith alone. Once you are in conception with a mind, you will believe anything. Whenever the idea of the mind is accepted, whenever the idea of a mind is accepted, the individual will believe anything or will imagine something that does not exist. This is why it is written or recorded that faith without works is dead. Continuing on, we're quoting scripture, James, the 2nd chapter, verse 14 through 20. What does it profit, my brethren, though a man say he has faith and have not works? Can faith save him? And I think we are proving here about this faith thing. So we see division here. We see separation here. We see wavering here. But it seems so complex to really perceive things as being holistic, but we have been what? Made to believe things is what? Dualistic. And it's troubling because we've allowed this to take place because of devolution. So, as we continue, we read where it goes on to say, can faith save him? If a brother or sister be naked and destitute of daily food, and one of you say unto him, Depart in peace. Be warm and filled. Notwithstanding, you give him not those things which are needful to the body. What does it profit? Even so, faith, if it has not works, is dead, being alone. Yea, man may say, thou hast faith, and I have works. Show me thy faith without thy works, and I will show you thee my faith by my works. Thou believest that there is one God. Thou doest well. The devil also believes and tremble. But wilt thou know, O vain man, that faith without works is dead? So we find a confirmation of what we just stated, that this concept of faith, this concept of being what? Divided, separated. And that's exactly what has happened in the devolution process. That's exactly what has happened while we're trying to evolve, but we don't know what was the evolution about. Evolution was not a place, or ascension is not a place. Ascension, you understand, or evolution would have to be a return to unity and oneness and wholeness, which would produce balance, which would produce harmony. All the things that we so desire, they are not external. They're not external. They're not religious. They are based upon physics. Based upon physics. So, I want to reveal something about the concept of physics again, and how we tend to overlook things by virtue of how we've been programmed and trained. And I'm going to go back to a quote of Rene Descartes, and he states, quote, Rene Descartes is usually regarded as the founder of modern philosophy. He was a brilliant mathematician, and his philosophical outlook as a thinker or scholar was profoundly affected by the new physics and astronomy. He did not accept any traditional knowledge, but set out to build a whole new system of thought. This system created the term we call dualism, that became the inorganic simulated reality. Now, we want to show you something about physics. And the word physics with an S on it is plural, but you never see physics without the S on it. But this is how it's written in the dictionary. Physic, without the S, it says singular, a noun, 13th century. It says natural science / knowledge of herbal healing. Herbal healing. To purge. 13th century, definition C. It says the science, knowledge of celestial or ethereal, meaning immaterial, intangible, ether. Now, Eitai have been talking to us about this. Any of various organic compounds characterized by an oxygen atom attached to 2 carbon atoms. An oxygen atom attached to 2 carbon atoms. Now, this is physics without the S, singular. Now we go to physics plural. with the S. And it's a noun, but guess what? 400 years later, before they come forth with that, 400 years later, 1715, definition number 1, it says the science that deals with matter and energy and their interaction in the field of mechanics, acoustics, optics, heat, electricity, magnetism, radiation, automated structure, and nuclear phenomena. 400 years later. So now we see a shift from the organic to the inorganic. We shift from man living in harmony and peaceful, but when they took 13th century, they took Aristotle and the Christian ethics and placed them together, and they said it was separation of church and state. And they brought us under, quote unquote, the plural element of physics. Now they include all the physical things, that they could utilize to create the conceptualization of a power, which was really, knowledge of how to take the things that produce power and transform them into physical machines and bombs, et cetera, and what? Scare the daylights out of everybody in terms of being able to what? Annihilate everybody on the planet through the concept of fear. Astronomy, 13th century. Science of knowledge of celestial bodies and their magnitude, their motion, and constitution. Though, of course, every one of us have heard so-and-so got a strong constitution. So-and-so, he's weak. He has a weak constitution. Men, by the same word constitution, they set up an order called government, and we find all of these terms that at one time or another was defined as an adjective, a description, and then it moved from a description, to a noun or to something that was tangible. And so now we got a separation between that which is abstract and non-tangible and that which is tangible. So we find ourselves being something tangible or material. Now we are convinced that being material, you can't exist but what? So long. Because of, but the separation that was created by, those that desire to rule over man. These ideas, these separations, this definition plays right into exactly how they want to govern things. So I wanted to bring those points out in respect to how devastating this whole idea of duality, has brought about the chaotic situation that's on the planet. We on this call, we are very much aware and has been very, well informed about this. It may not be the easiest thing for us to do, grasp and understand, but nevertheless, we've been well informed about this duality and this unity and oneness of wholeness. Picking up where we said we would continue from after the explanation that we had just given, the impact of cognitive dissonance on enhancement strategies. That's where we left off yesterday. We will use our ancient wisdom correct application of the knowledge of wholeness in viewing the human brain structure and function, and with which it is directly connected to the cosmic energy of the universe. The existence of humanity as a physical species would continue to remain present and is not to be transit. It is completely related to the maintenance of one's cognitive enhancement. Now, without cognitive enhancement, then one is subject to the other side of the coin, cognitive dissonance. We are going to make a comparative analysis of the brain and the mind. First, the brain is a physical organ, whereas the mind is nothing that can be defined without a connection to the brain. Whenever you attempt to define the mind without consciousness of the brain, it would be abstract, disassociated from any particular instant, and difficult to impossible to understand. Through the power to define being used as a weapon of deception, it has been to take away one's sense organ and create the idea of a mind. In the process of time, this idea became accepted by humanity, and as a result, they are now convinced that an abstract idea is preferred as essential in the governing of their organism and sustaining their knowledge of who they are and the relationship to their source of life. The brain without consciousness is inert, lifeless. When consciousness is facilitated through the brain, the end result is called mind. And this is a quote: mind is a working brain, a brain in action. Mind comes into being when an operating brain is animated with life. There is no mind without the physical expression of life through a functioning brain. Page 69, Evolve Your Brain by Joe Dispenza. In the life science, Cartesian vision has led to endless confusion about the relationship between mind and brain. Now here we go. And in physics, it made it extremely difficult for the founders of quantum theory to interpret their observations of atomic phenomena. According to Heisenberg, who struggled with the problem for many years. So we can see that this struggle that we are going through and not different from all the others that struggle with this concept. This partition has penetrated deep into the human mind during the 3 centuries following Descartes, and will take a long time for it to be replaced by a really different attitude toward the problem of reality. Descartes based his whole view of nature on the fundamental division between 2 independent and separate realms: the mind, the thinking thing. But now we just said, but it ain't, it's not a thing. And that of matter, the extended thing. So we find matter is a thing or an object of something, but the thinking thing called the mind is not. But again, this was a quote from The Turning Point, Fritjof Capra. In the same chapter, the Newtonian World Machine, in the older book is on page 45. Continuing on, The existence of humanity as a physical species is to continue to enhance their cognition because it is completely related to the maintenance of one's knowledge and relationship to the energy source of life. In order to prevent the cognitive enhancement, other side of the same coin is cognitive dissonance. When applying it as an opposite idea, it ensures psychological conflict, which will affect the total thought process of the human organism. Cognitive dissonance. Now, again, we see a couple of 100 years between cognitive, cognition and cognitive dissonance. So we can see that it's in the process of these cycles of time when words are coined, they are working to what? Try to what? Better understand how to put these things together that they can use them to influence the objective and direction of the people that they are governing. But if we do not take the responsibility to halt the process ourselves, then we will what? Remain cognitive dissonant and what? We'll not even recognize that we are. Because cognitive dissonance is what? Is that? Only conflict because, simultaneously holding two ideas or two thoughts, believing in that concept of a mind, two ways of viewing things as opposed to one. Nothing complicated, nothing complicated. Let us remove some of the erroneous conceptions about cognition. It is to know or come to know. Cognition is not to think as many believe. To know is not the same as thinking. It is commonly thought to know is not to be wise. You've heard that term, but we must correct this statement. It is to think, which is not to be wise. To think is not to be wise, not to know. See, the problem with knowing and thinking is what we have come to know based upon our thought process and based upon the moving away from wholeness and unity and oneness where everything are connected to everything being disconnected and separated. So now we have to what? Define based upon our division and separation things that we know and things that we don't know. So now we got the thought process put in place. Cognitive dissonance comes into existence when one is brought under the influence of dualism or two modes of thinking. A double-minded person is unstable in all of their ways. Now, if we had to ask ourselves about ourselves, not one of us on this line would say we're unstable. Because when you state you're unstable, you're actually saying something is wrong with your mind. Something is wrong with your mind. Well, if we're unstable, there's something wrong with what? The thing that we are referring to as the mind. Continuing on. Let me first provide everyone as to why the article Grow Your Mind, the truth about how to boost your brain's performance, was so badly overlooked. And this Grow Your Mind, the truth about how to boost your brain's performance, that was the article that occurred in 2011 in Newsweek. And of course, we've mentioned it before online. First, let me reveal why everyone missed the revelation, because everyone were preoccupied with what is perceived as the great gift to humanity. And what was the great gift? The great gift to humanity was believed to be their mind. That was the great gift to humanity. They told you to say a mind is a terrible thing to waste or to lose. Everyone believed that they could grow their mind through developing, a greater skill level and a greater knowledge of certain things, that their mind would grow. Although it was never something tangible to be grown. So how was the mind going to grow? But again, all of this is a part of deception. Greater cognition. Now here we verify if it wasn't about a mind based upon the article. Greater cognitive capacity. Now, cognition is not thinking. Cognition has to do with, relating to cognition. Cognitive is related to cognition. We gave the definition yesterday. Greater cognitive capacity comes from more neurons or synapses. Now, those are actually cells. Okay, those are tangible physical cells we're talking about. Higher levels of neurogenesis, brain cells, the beginning of new brain cells, the creation of new neurons or synapses, especially in the memory forming hippocampus. That's not the mind, yet increased production of compound such as BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor, which stimulates the production of neurons and synapses. We ain't said nothing here about doing anything with the intangible thing that we believe is the mind. Says neuroscientist Jacob Stern, Columbia University. Both neurogenesis and synapses formation boost learning, memory, knowing, and creativity. Not the mind. They ain't growing no mind to have no creativity. And how is they going to grow a mind anyway? That's something that they ain't made, something that they have not physically put together. Quote, and in people who excel in particular tasks, Stern's neuroimaging studies show brain circuits tend to be more efficient, using less energy, even as cognitive demands increase. Even as what? Knowing increase, you what? Demands what? Less energy, higher capacity, and more flexibility with what? Increase, neurons. One of the strongest findings in neuroplasticity, the science of how the brain changes its structure. How do something that has no structure change its structure and function in response to input? the science of how the brain changes its structure and its function in response to input. In is that attention is almost magical in its ability to physically alter the brain and enlarge functional circuits. Quote, end the quote, grow your mind the truth about how to boost your brain performance. So growing your mind, let's be real about this. It's what? Elevating, if you want to call it growing, the expansion of your consciousness. Expansion of your consciousness. Your what? Your knowledge, your ability to know. And by doing so, less energy is used because of what? Greater what? Cognition, because of what? More neurons, you know. I want to just kind of like say something about, you remember, family, when Eitai took us through the Yakub story about the big head scientist. Now, when we think about a big head, we see big head today as means somebody, well, you think you know everything. But let's look at big head. The bigger the head means more what? More brain circuits, more neurons, and what? Gives you greater capacity, as opposed to the way they got it today, big head, you know everything. Yaakov, the big head scientist. Yaakov. Continuing on, we must understand exactly what occurred and is occurring when the input of knowledge of organic knowledge or organic energy of truth and wholeness, unity and oneness. So now with the input of organic knowledge of energetic truth of wholeness and unity and oneness, you're going to have one effect, as opposed to that of dualism, which creates reason and rationalism, which separates and divides into specific particles and parts of knowledge, falsely so-called, or the truth, and nothing but the whole truth. So we either got the truth and nothing but the truth, or either we got what? Parts of the truth and what? Falsehood and nothing but falsehood. This is the knowledge of the original structure and function of the cosmos, universe, which was in complete harmony and balance. The original knowledge, you know, and the knowledge of how the universe functioned, it was not chaotic. It was not dualistic. It was not rational, you know. But here we are, you know, under this false influence. We now unsure about a lot of things. So back again. Now we're going to look at the impairment of cognitive dissonance on enhancement strategies. The impairment of cognitive dissonance on enhancement strategies. Look at the other side of the coin. The objective of the scientists from the 16th and 17th century was to develop strategies along with culture constraints that would not appear as a mechanization of science, but as a natural function of the cosmos. Now, let's take an example. Just a few days ago, we had a major, water rain, whatever you want to call it, hail and ice, right here in Israel. So it came up that we need to what? Go back home to our families, and we need to sit and talk with them and ask questions to ourselves and the family as to what we are doing that has brought about these things. What we need to be doing to what? Halt these things. I guess that is to say, when it rains, it ain't supposed to rain on the moment. But my point is exactly what we're talking about here. The impairment of cognitive dissonance, on enhancement strategies. So when we look and we see now that the mechanization of what they call the world machine, they have come up with the science and the technology to know how to seed the clouds and cause it to rain and cause things to happen. They call it HARP. That's just one of the mechanisms out of many others. Just one of the mechanisms. So if we believe that the universe and nature is actually what brought this about, then we rule out what we know he had physically mechanized and put together to cause things to happen. And this brings me to my other point. I asked the question to the family. What is it that gives the average man the ability to take that which is organic and then put it in an inorganic system and cause that inorganic system to manifest a physical presence upon humanity that's devastating? Example, an atomic bomb. A bomb and drop it on. How was he able to do that? And here we keep talking about we are spiritual and being the actual organism, I said, that are actually tied to the organic, you understand, elements that were responsible for creating us. And then we have absolutely no power to manifest anything. How did he do that? We back to knowledge again. We're back to knowledge again, to know. So what you don't know and what somebody else does know is they would say, make a whole new world. And I'm only saying, how could the inorganic have more power than the organic? And the inorganic is using organic, you understand, elements to what? Use in his inorganic system to what? Put it back up on organic man. I want us to think about that. Where's the power at? Where's the real power at? Continue on. The Cartesian view of the universe as a mechanical system provided a scientific sanction for the manipulation and exploitation of nature that has become typical of the Western culture. In fact, Descartes himself shared Bacon's view that the aim of science was the domination and control of nature, affirming that scientific knowledge could be used to render ourselves the masters and possessors of nature. I want us to hear that. Knowledge, cognitive dissonance, the other flip side of cognitive enhancement. It ain't going to happen. It done already happened. You don't even worry about being cognitive dissonant that something's going to happen, futuristically. It done already happened. But humanity has not known it. We have not known it. This was taken from Turning Point, page 46, same chapter, World Machine, Newtonian World Machine, older copy, page 46. The impairment to make worse of the growth and reproduction of the human species is very subtle, yet enormously profound when the concept of cognitive dissonance was introduced to humanity. Cognitive enhancement suggested improving and making better wholeness. Unity and oneness was the very objective of the ancient organic living experience, which was to aid the whole human species. Although with the objective being very sinister, such as the likes of Bacon and Descartes and others which had other plans, to the enhancement, which was cognitive prevention caused by cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance, a noun, 1957. You see the time? 1300 to 1900, or 1400 to 1957. Cognitive dissonance implies psychological conflict resulting from incongruous beliefs and attitude held simultaneously. We're back to what? Faith. We're back to belief again. Away from knowing. Conflict, a mental struggle resulting from incompatible or opposing needs, drives, wishes, or mental or internal demand, hostile encounter, fight, battle, collision. Psychological, 1830, the science of the mind and behavior. Is behavior, this is a question, is behavior controlled by the mind or activated by the mind, or is behavior activated by knowledge? That's a question. The study of the mind and behavior in relationship to a to a particular field of knowledge or activity. I think you got your answer right there. Study of the mind and behavior in relation to a particular field of knowledge or activity. So it wasn't never about no mind. It was always about knowledge, a particular field of knowledge. A treatise on psychology, treatise. And they said obsolete means a tale or document for handling and treatment agreed upon, used as a method for discussion, involved in reaching various conclusions and solutions. Now here we find what we would call covenants, agreements. We call various methods that have been used by contemporary average man, that he agreed upon something, but keeping his agreement, keeping the covenant, they told us about what? A new covenant. And we got to ask ourselves about the new covenant. What is the new covenant that we really supposed to be talking about keeping? And they said we broke the old covenant. Well, what covenant did we break? And there's a new covenant. These are thoughts now, in terms of maybe we need to break the new covenant in terms of our way of believing things and turning back to before we come under these social constructs. Maybe we would be better off thinking that we have broken, an old covenant, with a creator that's somewhere in the heavens, And we need to what? Create a new covenant with him. Maybe it's the new covenant we need to what? Break, so that we can get back to what? That which we knew before we fell victim to, quote unquote, the new covenant. And what we want to do here is we want to halt for a moment and ask Eitai, we covered a lot. So halt right here for a moment and give everybody an opportunity to kind of digest, and if they got any questions or comments at this point, then we can address them, and then we try to hope to close it out and be finished with this element. Okay?
Yeah, I'm pausing it now.